Hare Krishna. Welcome to class 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2. We're on chapter 2, and we're excited to start. We'll start with some kirtan. Haribol.
Okay. Haribol, sweet soul. So happy to be here with you all. Hare Krishna. So let's take a few deep breaths to just shift from your day to being here now and prepare to be absorbed in the holy name and Krishna Kacha, right? Hearing about these spiritual, transcendental matters. Deep breath in. Exhale, clear it out. Our opening prayers. Inhale, sip it in. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bolo, bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama. One more together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. From your heart last time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Shri Krishna Bhagavatam ki,
Jai.
Shri Shri Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki,
Jai.
Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Harinam Sankirtan ki, Ramat Bhakti Al Sangha and Beyond ki, Shastra Study Group ki, Gaura Premanande, Hari 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 Om.
Om Jnanatimirantasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpatarupshascha Kripa Sindhupya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. All right, class 2, chapter 2. We got some nice reflections and a good question in chat. So let's start with any reflections, and then I'll jump on that question that Pam asked in chat. Anything that stood out? We heard a lot about remembrance. A lot of people were reflecting about remembrance. So feel free to wax eloquent about that. What did you hear? The first chapter, Canto 2.
What I heard was, why are we waiting?
Why are we waiting?
What are you waiting for? In other words, for me to speak for myself, what am I waiting for? But it gets a little bit to Pam's question too. How do we be of this world, but not of this world? And thinking about the idea of not being attached to my grandson who just got his little white and black karate belt. So it's learning how to, be able to go deep and have the ultimate attachment be to Krishna, but not, I don't know, not ignore our families. I mean, not necessarily walk away from it, but to realize that there's a higher thing that's going to be happening to us, and we got to be prepared for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of a good lead into the question. Pam was asking about in verses 15 and 16, there's a discussion about the Varnashrama system, and most of that first chapter really was focused on, because that's the question Parikshit had, like what is the most important thing for me to do now? And so Shukadeva Goswami is speaking about Ante Narayana Smriti, to remember the Lord at the time of death. And of course, Parikshit's in a special situation where he knows that he's going to die in 7 days, so he's got like full permission to actually just completely completely focus on that exclusively. But Prabhupada is talking about the life, the mission of human life, which is to come progressively to that. So the question was there about like specifically Vanaprastha and Sannyasa ashrams, which is what's called the retired and renounced orders of life. And so the idea is that we've got a dual existence here. We're spiritual beings having a material existence, and both things are true, right? It's a very rare person who doesn't need to go through, really has no need for engagement with a family and like relationships, and it's just like for them they can opt out of the whole material thing entirely. It's very rare. And so generally people go through a lifetime, which means they go through having some training. In an ideal situation, if the social structure is intact and spiritual guidance is there, then before one, just like before you are working, you get educated. You get educated about what you need for your job. So along with the material education that one is to receive, one also receives a spiritual education. So that's like your first step. And then you enter into the life of like partnering up and expressing yourself through your occupation and your profession, and gathering your economic base and developing and maybe raising kids and doing that whole thing, and taking care of a household, and that's part of life. And when you're doing that, that's the thing that you focus on while you keep your practice there. But the next phase is that what's called Vanaprastha means that you're not completely renounced from activity in the world yet, but you have come to a point where you are naturally no longer needing to put as much energy. Specifically, it means like you're not engaged in economic development anymore actively, right? Which is also part of life, And of course, the way that their economic systems are designed now, retirement age is like creeping up closer and closer to death, is trying to squeeze as much out of you as they can. But that's actually unnatural. It's actually an unnatural situation. It's natural to come to a point of like, yeah, the kids are grown up. They're able to stand on their own 2 feet. We've provided, and we don't need more. And so one can, with their partner or on their own, just put more energy into their spiritual practice. And that's a natural phase of life. That's basically what Vanaprastha is. Sannyasa is a specific phase. Technically, it only applies to men, and even then, it's not mandatory, as Prabhupada explains in other purports. The essence of sannyasa is full renunciation. Sannyasa, actually, the Sanskrit word, means complete or proper placement. It's like basically like total dedication. In fact, the idea of sannyasa or total dedication is comes up in Bhagavad Gita in a couple places, namely chapter 6 and chapter 18. And the idea there is that proper sannyas means actually total dedication to everything you do, which means not that you're almost completely renounced from the world. You're completely renounced from any material activity. Everything you're doing is just like either your spiritual practice, helping others in their spiritual practice, teaching. For men who choose a sannyasa ashram, it's a very responsible, very mature position of like, now I'm ready to just like completely set aside all connection with my previous life and just give, as Prabhupada did. Prabhupada entered the sannyasa ashram. Now even sannyas, as the Bhagavatam explains, has 4 different stages. In the first stage, you still have some connection with your wife, right? And as you get more and more developed, like one may be like traveling the world, just sharing. So the specifics are there, but sannyas, the principles of sannyas in a woman's life are basically like staying in one place. You find like very advanced devotees, like Mother Nindra in Denver, like Mother Daivi Shakti in Vrindavan, like they pick a holy place, they just stay there, just do their service, and they become like practically very advanced from their dedication. They have no connection with money anymore. If like they need anything, it's provided to them. They live extremely simply. They're if they had any connection with family life, that's behind them, and they're practically ready for that, right? the idea of these stages is not like somebody's putting a gun to your head and saying, now you have to go. Is that this is the goal, right? Just like when I remember when I was first going to school, I was afraid. And I told my mom I was afraid of going to school, and I went to school anyway. If I had my way, I would never have gone to school. But it was a natural stage. I had to do it, right? So these systems and phases of life, they're there because if we don't talk about them, guess what? We'll never go anywhere. We'll stay exactly where we are because unfortunately, that's basically like the impetus. Like, yeah, I'm okay here. I'm good. I'm all right. I'm comfortable. And if we don't know that there's an option to actually to develop spiritually, then we'll never take it. And why would anybody take it unless they've actually in the beginning of their life or earlier on had a taste of it? That's why the first step is to get a taste, right? Brahmachari life means student training. So in a fundamental, kind of practical way, what we're doing here, if this is your first serious taste, then this is the beginning of your brahmachari life. It's like, you know what? I may be doing whatever I'm doing with my life, but I'm getting the beginnings of spiritual taste, because when the time comes to renounce more, and whether I want it or you want it, we're going to have to do it. The writing's going to be on the wall, money-wise, health-wise. It's just, you got to give it up at some point. If you don't have something to fall back on, oh yeah, I did chant the whole Bhagavad Gita, that was wonderful. And, oh yeah, chanting Hare Krishna, I've been doing it every day through thick and thin, and I guess I could just chant more now. And, I can read more Bhagavatam, and I can do more of these devotional activities. If you don't have that, you'll never go there. So it's a system to progressively get one to the point where they have the privilege of being, you know what? I don't have to do anything else now. I've crossed my T's, I've dotted my I's. Now I'm allowed to just chant and read. I can just go to holy places and just worship deities and be around. I can just do that? Really? I'm allowed to? Really? I feel like I'm cheating the system. No, you've earned it. Okay, I'm in. By that point, it's a mature choice. So the actual formal stages are just the categories of that choice for the sake of formalizing what happens in the heart, right? And for the sake of organizing someone's life. Because, like I said, if we don't have categories and graduations and movement and boxes and closing a box and opening another one, then we don't really have culture. That's why we get married and have ceremonies and graduation day and throw your hat in the air. It's that's human life. So all these ashrams are basically just a way of commemorating our growth, spiritually and materially. Does that make sense? And if you're not ready for the most renounced stage, that's okay. Because Krishna says in the Bhagavatam, Sve sve adhikariya nishta sagunav parikirtitaha. Vipariya chudosha syad uboyor esha nishtataha, I think. Which means that to act according to one's present qualification is a good quality. And to not act according to your qualification is not a good quality. In other words, to do less or to do more. Mm-hmm. So that's it. Just find out where you're at and do it. And don't worry if someone else is doing more or less. Not our problem. It's these are just maps. You don't have to be everywhere on the map at the same time. That's absurd. Just find where you are. And understand what your next steps are. The micro steps from here to there. That's all. Cool? Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what the Bhagavatam is. It's a big map. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we'll read something that's oh my God, that's exactly what I needed today. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they'll read something that's I have no idea what to do with this right now. And that's okay. File it away. One day you will. One day you will. Okay. Ready? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. Okay, chapter 2. Chapter 2 is called, delightfully, The Lord in the Heart. What a nice name. Per chapter. Text 1. Shri Shukadeva Goswami said. So Shukadeva is describing to Parikshit after just basically concluding that you have to come to a point of remembrance. Formerly, prior to the manifestation of the cosmos, Lord Brahma, by meditating on the Virat Rupa, regained his lost consciousness by appeasing the Lord. Thus, he was able to rebuild the creation as it was before. Why is this relevant? Prabhupada explains. The example cited herein of Sri Brahmaji is one of forgetfulness. Brahma, or Brahmaji, Ji is a honorific. It's a way of showing respect. Brahmaji is the incarnation of one of the mundane attributes of the Lord. Being the incarnation of the passion mode of material nature, he is empowered by the Lord to generate the beautiful material manifestation. Yet due to his being one of the numerous living entities, he is apt to forget the art of his creative energy. This forgetfulness of the living entity is a tendency which can be counteracted by meditation on the Virat Rupa of the Lord. The Virat Rupa is the universal form, the form of the Lord in the shape of the universe. This chance is available in the human form of life, and if a human being follows the instructions of Srimad Bhagavatam and begins to meditate upon the Virat Rupa, then revival of their pure consciousness and counteraction of the tendency to forget their eternal relationship with the Lord can follow simultaneously. Liberation from the last part of the purport. Liberation means getting out of the slumber of forgetfulness and becoming situated in the real loving service of the Lord, as exemplified in the case of Brahma. The service of Brahma is the sample of service and liberation, distinguished from the so-called altruistic services full of mistakes and forgetfulness. Liberation is never inaction, but service without human mistakes. So Shukadeva is giving a practical example of remembrance. Remember, to reconnect, right? We've said this, I don't know, a dozen times now, but the word religion, religio, to reconnect, that's the essential meaning of religion, to reconnect. So having basically answered Parikshit's question about what your fundamental duty is, i.e., hey, Maharaj Parikshit, you got to remember now. Now you got to forge this remembrance for the time of death. Now he's going to give this example to show it's been done before. Verse 2. The way of presentation of the Vedic sounds is so bewildering that it directs the intelligence of the people to meaningless things like the heavenly kingdoms. The conditioned souls hover in dreams of such heavenly illusory pleasures, but actually they do not relish any tangible happiness in such places. Purport. The conditioned soul is always engaged in laying out plans for happiness within the material world, even up to the end of the universal limit. They are not satisfied with available amenities on this planet Earth, where they have exploited the resources of nature to the best of their ability. They want to go to the moon or the planet Venus to exploit resources there. There are innumerable universes and also innumerable planets in each of them, but none of them is immune to the chief miseries of material existence, namely the pangs of birth, the pangs of death, the pangs of old age, and the pangs of disease. The Lord says that even the topmost planet, known as Brahmaloka or Satyaloka, is not a happy land for residential purposes, due to the presence of material pangs as above mentioned. Conditioned souls are strictly under the laws of fruitive activities, and as such they sometimes go up to Brahmaloka and again come down to Patalaloka, as if they were unintelligent children on a merry-go-round. The real happiness is in the kingdom of God, where no one has to undergo the pangs of material existence. Therefore, the Vedic ways of fruitive activities for living entities are misleading. One thinks of a superior way of life in this country or that, or on this planet or another, but nowhere in the material world can they fulfill their real desire of life, namely eternal life, full intelligence, and complete bliss. So this is a critique of the inferior goals that are also offered in the Vedic literature. They are. They're not offered in Bhagavatam. That's not what Bhagavatam is about. As the Bhagavatam begins by saying, Dharma Prochita, this Bhagavatam, Prabhupada poetically calls it, kicks out cheating religion. You know, the idea of spirituality with a subpar or inferior goal. It rejects it. It rejects inferior goals. It's aimed at pure love of God. But we can find that in the Vedic tradition and in any tradition, there's like systems of punishment and reward, right? Get the carrot or get the stick. Like the idea of like inspiring people through fear of punishment or material prospect of reward, right? Actually, these are manifestations of religion, religio, reconnecting, spirituality, in modes of nature. Religion in tamas functions on fear and avoidance, and to be afraid of something. Hey, if you're not a good person, you'll suffer, right? And here's what that suffering looks like. Here's a temporary hellish situation you'll be involved in, either in this life or in some other location, right? And that's useful to some degree, but it has a temporary vision. It has a material goal, because all it really does is encourage people to don't be below this line, right? Passion, a little higher, it kind of engages the tendency of the living entity to want to increase or improve their situation. Hey, how about you want to have some material desires fulfilled? Here's some of the things you want. If you actually do these things in this way, you'll benefit from them in this life or the next. And that's all over spiritual texts and teachings. It's very popular now because we live in a culture where that rajas mode is considered the highest mode, where it's like, yeah, what if you could be like super rich and amazingly beautiful, and like, yeah, what if you could be like really powerful and live for a long time? It's called prosperity religion, and it's got a lot of interested advocates, because people who are at the stage of like, yeah, I'll be a good person because I know that it can actually result in better things for me. That's what it appeals to, is that sense that one has at that level. In goodness and sattva, one is inspired by a sense of duty. This is the right thing to do. Morality, duty, respect for authority. Oh, you're telling me to do this? My teacher, my parents, my bishop, my name spiritual leaders from any tradition. Like my rabbi, this, that, the other. Okay, I'll do it because I respect you, because I love you. Actually, technically, love is above the modes of nature. If you actually like come to the point of spontaneously being attracted to the supreme person, out of love for them, following what's best for you in terms of acting in a way to support that relationship, that's above the modes of nature entirely. That's what Bhagavatam is aiming at: spontaneous love of God. However, it's a encyclopedic endeavor, to try to catch everybody where they're at. So there are sections of the Vedas that deal extensively with how to perform good karma and how to be a good person so you can get some material reward, because there are a lot of people who are aiming at that. And Shukadeva is saying like, yeah, but that's very bewildering. Now he's like saying that. Understand all that stuff is way down there. That's not what you should be about right now. These last few moments of your life, right? Verse 3.
Can I just ask something quick?
Sure.
Sorry.
Sure.
Can you explain? I'm a little confused by the way of presentation of the Vedic sounds is so bewildering that the intelligence of the people is directed to meaningless things like the heavenly kingdom. Does that mean that, it's almost the romanticism that can be used in describing, or in the chanting or the singing or the
Well,
extolling? That's
yeah, because I don't know if you were, maybe others can remember this, but it happened in the first canto also, where Narada Muni was telling Vyasadeva, look, you've presented all these other aspects of Shastra, but you haven't been direct enough. And
right.
because of that, you're basically indirectly inspiring people to just do good karma.
Okay. So that when it
And the
says the
thing is,
Vedic sounds, it's what
yeah,
has been taught. It just keeps on getting people interested in heavenly planets rather than
right,
actually
because
what they need. Okay.
that's the carrot that's being dangled.
Okay. Thank
You
you.
can go to the heavenly planets. It's not that hard. You just do good karma, right? Um, like honestly, like if you look at like the generationally wealthy families in cultures that come from like dharmic backgrounds, they actually understand this. In order to be not just wealthy for yourself, but generationally wealthy, where like generation after generation, they're just like they're always wealthy. You have to keep giving back. It's just the way the universe works. If you're greedy, you can be like a flash in the pan, and for one lifetime, you're super wealthy, and then you're gone. It just falls apart. But if you want to have like sustainable wealth, then you got to like follow the system of the universe. So that's what the Vedas deal a lot with, is like how to be a pious karmic worker. It's like, I just want the good parts. I don't want the bad stuff. I want to have the best food, live forever, have the most glorious physical experiences, the greatest intellectual benefits. I want to have all that. I want to be a demigod. I want to be an angel. I want to dance with the heavenly damsels. I want to go to the heavenly planets. You can have that. And the Vedas deal with that. And it's quite bewildering for someone who's still attracted to those things. So that's what is being described here. Verse 3, for this reason, the enlightened person should endeavor only for the minimum necessities of life while in the world of names. It's called the world of names. He should be intelligently fixed and never endeavor for unwanted things, being competent to perceive practically that all such endeavors are merely hard labor for nothing. From the purport, the Bhagavad Dharma, or the culture of Srimad Bhagavatam, is perfectly distinct from the way of fruitive activities which are considered by the devotees to be merely a waste of time. The whole universe, or for that matter, all material existence, is moving on as jagat, simply for planning business to make one's position very comfortable or secure, although everyone sees that this existence is neither comfortable nor secure and can never become comfortable or secure at any stage of development. Those who are captivated by the illusory advancement of material civilization, following the way of phantasmagoria, are certainly madmen. The whole material creation is a jugglery of names only. It is nothing but a bewildering creation of matter like earth, water, and fire. The buildings, furniture, cars, bungalows, mills, factories, industry, peace, war, or even the highest perfection of material science, namely atomic energy and electronics, are all simply bewildering names of material elements with their concomitant reactions of the three modes. Since the devotees of the Lord know them perfectly well, they are not interested in creating unwanted things for a situation which is not at all reality, but simply names of no more significance than the babble of sea waves. The great kings, leaders, and soldiers fight with one another in order to perpetuate their names in history. They are forgotten in due course of time, and they make a place for another era in history. But the devotee realizes how much history and historical persons are useless products of flickering time. So, bit of context here. Bit of context. Verse 4. So this is a famous section about Prabhupada called our movement simple living and high thinking. This is the part about simple living. Verse 4, when there are ample earthly flats to lie on, what is the necessity of cots and beds? When one can use their own arms, what is the necessity of a pillow? When one can use the palms of their hands, what is the necessity of varieties of utensils? When there is ample covering or the skins of trees, what is the necessity of clothing? Don't forget that Shukadev was walking around naked. He was in this stage of life. Very, very renounced. Like completely devoid of any interest in the material world. So he's speaking to that aspect. Note, depending on where one's at, as I said earlier, it's a good quality to act according to your qualification. Don't pretend you're somewhere you're not. We're not saying we should give up all your clothes and walk around naked. We had a little baby come in today. A friend of ours came with a little girl, 2 years old.
Coco.
Yeah.
Too.
And I was saying, like, it's nice to be that age because you can get away with it. She was naked.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you gotta deal with all this stuff. Like clothes. You gotta deal with so many things later. You just do because you have all these desires, you gotta function in society. Okay. But don't rush it, because once you're in the game, it takes a while to get out again. But Shukadevi's not in that game. He's got no chips in the game. He's not playing at all. So he's talking about how it's just a bunch of names, like let's not kid ourselves. It's not real. The things that we're playing for are not real. So he's talking about very simple living, that, hey, if you've got these arms, why not use them as your pillow? Like, revolutionary, right? And imagine just like not needing a pillow. So these kinds of things. Verse 5. Are there no torn cloths lying on the common road? Do the trees, which exist for maintaining others, no longer give alms and charity? Right? Like food, like bark, like wood, like leaves. Everything the tree gives is usable. Do the rivers, being dried up, no longer supply water to the thirsty? These like rhetorical questions. Are the caves of the mountains now closed? And above all, does the Almighty Lord not protect the fully surrendered souls? Why then do the learned sages go to flatter those who are intoxicated by hard-earned wealth? Right? Interesting last sentence. This is like the role of the devotee or the advanced person is, well, Prabhupada will speak to it. I'll let him speak. The renounced order of life is never meant for begging or living at the cost of others as a parasite. According to the dictionary, a parasite is a sycophant who lives at the cost of society without making any contribution to that society. Right? This is what beggars have become now. It's considered a very low position. Actually, the sannyasa ashram is the highest position. Why? Prabhupada explains. The renounced order is meant for contributing something substantial to society and not depending on the earnings of the householders. On the contrary, acceptance of alms from the householders by the bona fide mendicant is an opportunity afforded by the saint for the tangible benefit of the donor. In the Sanatana Dharma institution, alms giving to the mendicant is a part of a householder's duty. And is it advised in the scriptures that the householder should treat the mendicants as their family children and should provide them with food, clothing, etc., without being asked? Pseudo-mendicants, false mendicants, therefore, should not take advantage of the charitable disposition of the faithful householders. The first duty of a person in the renounced order of life is to contribute some literary work for the benefit of the human being in order to give them to realize direction towards self-realization. So he gives the example Prabhupada does here of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Followers of Lord Chaitanya who wrote extensively. They didn't just sit in one place. Although there's nothing wrong with sitting in one place if you're qualified to do it and just chant. That's also a qualified form of sannyas. But in our land especially, we see it with Narada, who's telling Vyas, like, you should share, you'd help others. We see with Prabhupada's mood here, the 6 Goswamis, like it's so much our mood to if you're at that place where you're really completely dedicated, and then give back, really help others. And where would we be without these books? Like, we're the products of all that. We're the products of Prabhupada following his guru, following their guru, following the 6 Goswamis, following Mahaprabhu. Otherwise, there's no question how in Burlington, Vermont, or anywhere else we'd be like reading this. We just would have no access. So, yeah. From the purport, in the middle of the purport, all the acharyas who voluntarily accepted the renounced order of life aimed at benefiting human society and not at living a comfortable or irresponsible life at the cost of others. However, those who cannot give any contribution should not go to the householders for food. For such mendicants, asking bread from the householders are an insult to the highest order, right? What happens if you have like fake mendicants who are just parasites, then it disrespects the whole tradition. Then no one's inclined to give. And then what happens to the real ones who are actually like trying to... The benefit of being completely renounced is that you don't have to worry about your maintenance. And that works best if there's anyone who has any sense of piety who's like, yeah, I'll pay for I'll feed you, you could stay under my roof for a night or something. But if no one has that piety, no one has any sense of respect, it doesn't work very well. And that respect gets eroded when people abuse, they pretend to be a mendicant just to get a free meal, right? There's a very strong criticism Prabhupada comes up with often, because that's one of the unfortunate symptoms of this age, is that you have degraded false sannyasis who are like going around having sex, living for a full belly, living like fools, making a complete travesty of things, and it degrades all sense of respect for the ashram and for the society. And then you have people no longer willing to give because they've been cheated so much. So that's been happening for hundreds of years now. Actually, it's not new, and it just makes it very hard for a social structure to stay intact and to be knit well together and synergistic. Continuing the purport. A sannyasi should always live alone without company, and he must be fearless. He should never be afraid of living alone, although he is never alone. The Lord is residing in everyone's heart. And unless one is purified by the prescribed process, one will feel that he is alone. But a man in the renounced order of life must be purified by the process. Thus he will feel the presence of the Lord everywhere, and will have nothing to fear, such as being without any company. Everyone can become a fearless and honest person if their very existence is purified by discharging the prescribed duty for each and every order of life. One can become fixed in one's prescribed duty by faithful oral reception of Vedic instructions and assimilation of the essence of Vedic knowledge by devotional service to the Lord. There it is, that gradual path again. Verse 6. Thus being fixed, one must render service unto the supersoul situated in one's own heart by his omnipotency, because he is the almighty personality of Godhead, eternal and unlimited. He is the ultimate goal of life. And by worshiping him, one can end the cause of the conditioned state of existence. How many verses are there in this chapter? From the purport. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 1861, Sri Krishna, 37. Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the all-pervading, omnipresent Supersoul. Therefore, one who is a yogi can worship only him, because he is the substance and not illusion. Every living creature is engaging in the service of something else. A conditioned soul works in the service of the temporary body, bodily relatives like the wife and children, and the necessary paraphernalia for maintaining the body, such as the house, land, wealth, society, and country, but they do not know that all such renderings of service are totally illusory. Every one of us is searching after real happiness in life, namely eternal life, eternal or unlimited knowledge, and unending blissful life. But foolish people who have no knowledge of the substance search after the reality of life in the illusion. If we at all want to end the cause of our conditioned life, we must take to the worship of Lord Sri Krishna, who is present in everyone's heart by his natural affection for all living beings, who are actually the parts and parcels of the Lord. The baby in the lap of his mother is naturally attached to the mother, and the mother is attached to the child. But when the child grows up and becomes overwhelmed by circumstances, he gradually becomes detached from the mother, although the mother always expects some sort of service from the grown-up child and is equally affectionate toward her child, even though the child is forgetful. Similarly, because we are all part and parcel of the Lord is always affectionate to us, and he always tries to get us back home, back to Godhead. But we, the conditioned souls, do not care for him and run instead after the illusory bodily connections. We must therefore extricate ourselves from all illusory connections of the world and seek reunion with the Lord, trying to render service unto him because he is the ultimate truth. Actually, we are hankering after him as the child seeks the mother. And to search out the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we need not go anywhere else because the Lord is within our hearts. This does not suggest, however, that we should not go to the places of worship. Such holy places of worship are also occupied by the Lord because the Lord is omnipresent. For the common person, these holy places are centers of learning about the science of God. When the temples are devoid of activities, the people in general become uninterested in such places, and consequently the mass of people gradually become godless, and a godless civilization is the result. Such a hellish civilization artificially increases the conditions of life, and existence becomes intolerable for everyone. So, Prabhupada's taking a very big picture view in these purports. He's talking about the role of organized religion, temples and places of worship, and of the ultimate necessity for taking shelter within your heart to find the Lord there. And how places and institutions and rituals serve that ultimate purpose. Verse 7. Who else but the gross materialists will neglect such transcendental thought and take to the non-permanent names only, seeing the mass of people fallen in the river of suffering as the consequence of accruing the result of their own work. In other words, those who are actually intelligent can see that it's not a good way to go, to just become dedicated to material activities and material results. That every example we've seen of people doing that doesn't go anywhere useful. So only somebody who's a dedicated materialist would want to do that. It's not wise. Verse 8, others conceive of the personality of Godhead residing within the body, in the region of the heart, and measuring only 8 inches, with 4 hands, carrying a lotus, a wheel of a chariot, a conch shell, and a club, respectively. The form of the Lord described, purport, the form of the Lord described in this verse with distribution of different symbols is called Janardana, or the plenary portion of the Lord who controls the general mass. There are many other forms of the Lord with varied situations of the symbols of lotus, conch shell, etc., and they're differently known as Purushottama, Achyuta, etc., a variety of names of the Lord here. The young Lord with 4 hands is nicely decorated with as described below. Verse 9. His mouth expresses his happiness. His eyes spread like the petals of a lotus, and his garments, yellowish like the saffron of a kadamba flower, are bedecked with valuable jewels. His ornaments are all made of gold, set with jewels, and he wears a glowing headdress and earrings. These are spiritual forms. This is the super soul. The Paramatma is actually an expansion of Krishna, as will be described more elaborately in the purports and in the verses themselves later in this canto. It's not merely sentiment when we say that God is in the heart. He literally is. He actually exists in a manifestation. In fact, Jiva Goswami explains that without Krishna's presence in every atom, even the atom, even any given atom cannot actually maintain its existence, because nothing can exist without connection to its source. So although he may not be explicitly there, like forcing himself on everybody to see and pay attention to, he must be there in order to be allowing for, permitting the existence of something. So the soul, the unit of consciousness, always has what's called supersoul, Paramatma, side by side. And this is a description of his spiritual form. Verse 10, his lotus feet are placed over the whorls of the lotus-like hearts of great mystics. On his chest is the Kaustuba jewel, engraved with a beautiful calf. And there are other jewels on his shoulders. His complete torso is garlanded with fresh flowers. Purport. The ornaments, flowers, clothing, and all the other decorations on the transcendental body of the personality of Godhead are identical with the body of the Lord. None of them are made of material ingredients. Otherwise, there would be no chance of their decorating the body of the Lord. As such, in the Paravyoma, spiritual reality, spiritual varieties are also distinguished from the material variegatedness. Verse 11. He is well decorated with an ornamental wreath about his waist and rings studded with valuable jewels on his fingers. His leglets, his bangles, his oiled hair curling with a bluish tint, and his beautiful smiling face are all very pleasing. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the most beautiful person amongst all others. And Sri Shukadeva Goswami describes every part of his transcendental beauty, one after another, in order to teach the impersonalists that the personality of Godhead is not an imagination by the devotee for facility of worship, but is the Supreme Person in fact and figure. The impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth is but his radiation, as the sun rays are but radiations from the sun. You hear about this like great white light. Literally, the Bhagavatam explains, as does the Brahma Samhita, that's the glowing effulgence coming off of his beautiful body. That's the light. It's the light coming off of his body. Verse 12. The Lord's magnanimous pastimes and the glowing glancing of his smiling face are all indications of his extensive benedictions. One must therefore concentrate on this transcendental form of the Lord as long as the mind can be fixed on him by meditation. It's a nice long purport here about the nature of meditation and the role of bhakti yoga in actually facilitating that meditation. Bhakti is actually the most efficacious way of creating meditation, creating a strong link. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali talk about this, that the goal of that text is to really talk about the mechanical process of fixing the mind. It's made for yogis. It's made for like Paramatma seeking practitioners of yoga. And even there, Patanjali Muni, who wrote the Yoga Sutras, he says the shortcut is what's called Ishvara Pranitana. Ishvara Pranitana means surrender to the Supreme Controller. So like instead of trying to figure out how to control your mind by yourself with all the pranayama and asana and the do's and don'ts, all that stuff is just to create a space where you can control your mind and then go into like the, angas 5 through 8 are like deepening meditation, dharana, dhyana, etc., till samadhi. Instead of doing that, he says the shortcut is if you just surrender to God, just surrender to the Supreme Controller. And that's the Supreme Yoga. So that's the logic there, and it's the same logic Prabhupada uses in this purport in drawing from, Bhagavad Gita and other sources, that Bhakti Yoga is actually the best way to do what this verse is talking about, to concentrate on the transcendental form of the Lord, right? Verse 13. The process of meditation should begin from the lotus feet of the Lord and progress to his smiling face. The meditation should be concentrated upon the lotus feet, then the calves, then the thighs, and in this way higher and higher. The more the mind becomes fixed upon the different parts of the limbs, one after another, the more the intelligence becomes purified. Purport. Yeah, Prabhupada talks about this. From the purport, there are authorized descriptions of Vishnu forms, and there are authorized representations of deities in the temple. Like they're not made up forms. The descriptions are given in Shastra. You can't make up a deity. That's cheating. That's like the golden calf in the Bible, right? Like all these fake deities. It's a big error. It's a big no-no. So the authorized representations of deities, etc. So thus one can practice meditating upon the deity, concentrating their mind on the lotus feet of the Lord, and gradually rising higher and higher up to his smiling face. That's etiquette. When you're seeing a deity, you start from the bottom and work up. It's a form of humbling oneself. So Prabhupada continues talking about this in terms of the Bhagavatam. According to the Bhagavata school, the Lord's rasa dance is the smiling face of the Lord. Those are his pastimes with the gopis in Vrindavan. They're described in Canto 10. Since it is recommended in this verse that one should gradually progress from the lotus feet up to the smiling face, we shall not jump at once to understand the Lord's pastimes in the rasa dance. It is better to practice concentrating our attention by offering flowers and tulsi to the lotus feet of the Lord. In this way, we gradually become purified by the archana process. We dress the Lord, bathe him, etc. And all these transcendental activities help us purify our existence. When we reach the higher standard of purification, if we see the smiling face of the Lord or hear the rasa dance pastimes of the Lord, then we can relish his activities. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, therefore, the rasa dance pastimes are delineated in the 10th canto, chapters 29 to 34. That's why devotees aren't advised to jump, there continues to be, in some places, like in India, a sense of immature skipping over parts of the Bhagavatam. You'll note that although Prabhupada gave us the Krishna book, which is literally just the 10th canto, and he paused translating, I think, what was it, in Canto 3 or something when he started Krishna book? He did present the Krishna book in a very systematic way where he weaves in basic, intermediate, and advanced philosophy. So you can't read the Krishna book without getting all that. He gives us like a crash course on all the fundamentals. That's his mercy. No one had done that before. Instead, sometimes they would have like these recitations where people would just sit down and recite the 10th canto to an unqualified audience who they don't even know that Krishna is, what the difference is between the supreme person and like a material person or God and, all those parts and parcels. And here they are hearing like Krishna dancing in the groves of Vrindavan. It's completely unfathomable. So that's what Prabhupada's talking about, is he's criticizing that way of artificially jumping. The more one concentrates on the transcendental form of the Lord, either the lotus feet, the calves, the thighs, or the chest, the more one becomes purified. In this verse, it is clearly stated, the more the intelligence becomes purified, which means the more one becomes detached from sense gratification. The result of meditation on the transcendental form of the Lord will be manifested by one's detachment from sense gratification. Therefore, the ultimate purpose of meditation is purification of one's intelligence. Those who are too engrossed in sense gratification cannot be allowed to participate in archana, deity worship, or touch the transcendental form of the Radha, Krishna, or Vishnu deities. For them, it is better to meditate upon the gigantic Virat Rupa of the Lord, as recommended in the next verse. Chanting Hare Krishna is unconditional. It doesn't require initiation. It doesn't require anything. That's Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Deity worship is a bit of a throwback to a previous age, and as such, it requires some qualification. At least, especially deity worship like in a temple with formal standards. Deity worship at home is different. It can be much more relaxed. But deity worship in a temple, you're kind of signing up for like Krishna manifesting himself in a very powerful way, but in return for us like having like very, very strict time-bound and cleanliness-bound rules of service, and they're performed like without breakage. And they're performed by persons who are themselves very dedicated. You can't have anybody just walk on the altar in a temple where deities are established and like, oh yeah, I love Krishna, I'll just serve him. I mean, you may have some bhakti for Krishna, but whether one likes it or not, that bhakti has to be manifested in terms of formally advancing and showing the symptoms of and being authorized to serve the deity directly. So when one is not there, there are other ways to serve. In fact, that's one of the reasons why in this age the holy name is accessible from day one. But Prabhupada is talking about if somebody is like very materialistically oriented, they're not even ready to accommodate the idea of a personal deity, a personal source of everything. For them, that's too much, right? Because of the material impurities in the mind and heart. So this process is recommended to come to meditation of on the Lord in the form of the universe. Verse 14. Unless the gross materialist develops a sense of loving service unto the Supreme Lord, the seer of both the transcendental and material worlds, they should remember or meditate upon the universal form of the Lord at the end of their prescribed duties. Right? So you're in the world, you have your prescribed duties. You should, if you haven't come to a point of developing some feeling for the personal source, then your prescribed spiritual activity is to see the Lord in the universe. It's kind of impersonal meditation, but with the goal of coming to personal meditation. From the purport, those who are impersonalists and are unable to render any loving service to the Lord have been advised to meditate upon his impersonal feature, the Virat Rupa or universal form. Some way or another, one must try to reestablish one's forgotten relation with the Lord if one at all desires to gain real happiness in life and to reclaim their natural unfettered condition. For the less intelligent, beginners, meditation on the impersonal feature, the Virat Rupa or universal form of the Lord, will gradually qualify one to rise to personal contact. Without such meditation on God, either personal or impersonal, all good qualities of the human being become covered with misconceptions regarding their constitutional position, and without such advanced knowledge, the whole world becomes a hell for the human being. 15. O king, whenever the yogi desires to leave this planet of human beings, they should not be perplexed about the proper time or place, but should comfortably sit without being disturbed, and regulating the life air, should control the senses by the mind. This is also described in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Thereafter the yogi should merge, and chapter 6 a bit too. Thereafter the yogi should merge their mind by their unalloyed intelligence into the living entity, the unit of consciousness, us. And then merge the living entity into the super self. And by doing this, the fully satisfied living entity becomes situated in the supreme stage of satisfaction, so that he ceases from all other activities. Verse 17. In that transcendental state of laptopashanti, Prabhupada he defined that term in the previous verse. The stage of full bliss. In that transcendental state of laptopashanti, the state of full bliss, there is no supremacy of devastating time which controls even the celestial demigods, who are empowered to rule over mundane creatures, and what to speak of the demigods themselves. Nor is there the mode of material goodness, nor passion, nor ignorance, nor even the false ego, nor the material causal ocean, nor the material nature. Verse 18. The transcendentalists desire to avoid everything godless, for they know that supreme situation in which everything is related with the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Therefore, a pure devotee who is in absolute harmony with the Lord does not create perplexities, but worships the lotus feet of the Lord at every moment, taking them into his heart. From the purport, the devotee tries to engage everything in his, the Lord's, service, and does not create perplexities by falsely lording it over the creation of the Lord. He is so faithful that he engages himself, as well as everything else, in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. In everything, the devotee sees the Lord, and he sees everything in the Lord. The specific disturbance created by a duratma, or crooked soul, is due to their maintaining that the transcendental form of the Lord is something material. Verse 19. By the strength of scientific knowledge, one should be well situated in absolute realization, and thus be able to extinguish all material desires. One should then give up the material body by blocking the air hole with the heel of one's foot, and by lifting the life air from one place to another in the 6 primary places. This is material, kind of like mechanical process of yoga, through the process of yama, niyama, the do's and don'ts, your sitting postures, breath control. This is what's described here. It's very gradual, and one is to come to a point of leaving the body through the life air. Verse 20, the meditative devotee should slowly push up the life air from the navel to the heart, from there to the chest, and from there to the root of the palate. He should search out the proper places with intelligence. So the chakras are described here as Svadhisthana chakra, Manipurika chakra, Anahata chakra, Vishuddhi chakra, Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport. Thereafter, the bhakti yogi should push the life air up between the eyebrows, and then blocking the 7 outlets of the life air, they should maintain their aim for going back home, back to Godhead. If they are completely free from all desires for material enjoyment, they should then reach the cerebral hole and give up their material connections, having gone to the Supreme. this is the mechanical process. It's not really what we're engaged in here. We're not qualified for that, but it's described here. The goal is the same, however. From the purport, they must return home back to Godhead and must not be attracted by any amount of material facilities. In Bhagavad Gita 259, it is said that this sort of material detachment is possible to attain when one is acquainted with the supreme association of life, parang drishtva nivartate. One cannot be freed from material attraction unless they have complete understanding of the nature of spiritual life. The propaganda by a certain class of impersonalists that spiritual life is void of all varieties is dangerous propaganda to mislead living beings into becoming more and more attracted by material enjoyments. As such, persons with a poor fund of knowledge cannot have any conception of the Param, the Supreme. They try to stick to the varieties of material enjoyments, although they may flatter themselves as being Brahman realized souls. The devotees have full knowledge of the spiritual world, the personality of Godhead, and his transcendental association in unlimited spiritual planets called Vaikuntha Lokas. Verse 22. However, O king, if a yogi maintains a desire for improved material enjoyments like transference to the topmost material planet, Brahmaloka, or the achievement of the eightfold perfections, so the yogic perfections called siddhis, travel in outer space with the Vaihayasas, or a situation in one of the millions of planets, then he has to take away with him the materially molded mind and senses. There's a description of the purport of some of the varieties of planetary systems, varieties of yogic siddhis available, such as Prapti Siddhi, to get whatever you want, to become heavier than the heaviest, Mahima Siddhi, to create something amazing or annihilate anything at will, Ishitva Siddhi, etc., etc. All these expediencies are as common as natural gifts for the inhabitants of those higher planets. They do not require any mechanical help to travel in outer space, and they can move and travel at will from one planet to any other within no time. The inhabitants of the Earth cannot move even to the nearest planet except by mechanical vehicles like spacecraft, but the highly talented inhabitants of such higher planets can do everything very easily. Was there a question? So it's just unmuted for a second. Okay. Since a materialist is generally inquisitive to experience what is actually in such planetary systems, they want to see everything personally. As inquisitive persons tour all over the world to gain direct local experience, they go on safari. The less intelligent transcendentalist similarly desires to have some experience of those planets about which they have heard so many wonderful things. The yogi can, however, easily fulfill their desire by going there with the present materialistic mind and senses. So if one is not yet ready to let go of the material mind and senses, they still have some attachment to the material world, they can advance in yoga and fulfill their material desires through their yoga practice. Become qualified to see what the big hubbub is about the higher planets. On the contrary, a devotee wants to be dominated by the Supreme Predominator, the Lord. A desire to serve the Lord, the Supreme Predominator, is spiritual, and one has to attain this purification of the mind and senses to get admission into the spiritual kingdom. With the materialistic mind, one can reach the best planet in the universe, but no one can enter into the kingdom of God. Senses are called spiritually purified when they are not involved in sense gratification. Senses require engagements, and when the senses are engaged totally in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, they have no chance to become contaminated by material infections. So even for the transcendentalist, there are superior and lower, higher and lower goals. You can take up spiritual practice and have a goal of like going on some kind of a tour of the material universe, seeing all the different higher planets, seeing what they're all about, getting a sense of the material varieties. Although it's not advised, but you can. That's the point of this section. Verse 23. The transcendentalists are concerned with the spiritual body. As such, by the strength of their devotional service, austerities, mystic power, and transcendental knowledge, their movements are unrestricted, within and beyond the material worlds. The fruitive workers or the gross materialists can never move in such an unrestricted manner. From the purport, the materialistic scientists' endeavor to reach other planets by mechanical vehicles is only a futile attempt. One can, however, reach heavenly planets by virtuous activities, but one can never expect to go beyond Svarga or Janaloka by such mechanical or materialistic activities, either gross or subtle. The transcendentalists who have nothing to do with the gross material body can move anywhere within or beyond the material worlds. There's a ceiling to how far you can go with gross or subtle material activities. To go higher than that, even in the material world, requires taking to transcendental activity. Prabhupada explains, within the material worlds, they move, the transcendentalists, in the planetary systems of the Mahar, Janas, Tapas, and Satyaloka, the 4 higher of the 14 planetary systems. They're different planes. So those are off limits to people who are just engaging in karma. You can go to like Indra's planet with karma, but it's not one of the 4 higher lokas. And beyond the material worlds, they can move in the Vaikunthas, spiritual places, spiritual planets, as unrestricted spacemen. Narada Muni is one of the examples of such spacemen, and Durvasa Muni is one of such mystics. By the strength of devotional service, austerities, mystic powers, and transcendental knowledge, everyone can move, like Narada Muni or Durvasa Muni. It is said that Durvasa Muni traveled throughout the entirety of material space and part of spiritual space within 1 year only. The speed of the transcendentalists can never be attained by the gross or subtle materialists. Gross materialist means like, I want to build a rocket ship. I want to crash that party by building a ship. Subtle materialist is understanding that you can't even go to a place and really enter it without more subtle qualification. It's like performance of pious activities, karma, ritual, and then being granted entry upon death of this body. So you get some higher situation in the next life. Still material though. So spiritual advancement is much more refined than that, and it allows access to the higher material planes and the spiritual world itself. Verse 24. O king, when such a mystic passes over the Milky Way by the illuminating Sushumna to reach the highest planet Brahmaloka, he goes first to Vaishvanara, the planet of the deity of fire, wherein he becomes completely cleansed of all contaminations, and thereafter he goes still higher to the circle of Shishumara to relate with Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. Verse 26 of 5. This Shishumara is the pivot for the turning of the complete universe, and it is called the navel of Vishnu, Garbhuta Vishaya Vishnu. The yogi alone goes beyond this circle of Shishumara and attains the planet Maharloka, where purified saints like Bhrigu enjoy a duration of life of 4.3 billion solar years. This planet is worshipable even for saints who are transcendentally situated. That's Maharloka. At the time of the final devastation of the complete universe, the end of the duration of Brahma's life, a flame of fire emanates from the mouth of Ananta, from the bottom of the universe. The yogi sees all the planets of the universe burning to ashes, and thus he leaves for Satyaloka by airplanes, used by the great purified souls. The duration of life in Satyaloka is calculated to be 15 quadrillion, 480 trillion years, I think. That's a lot of zeros. It's 9 zeros.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hundreds, 100,000, million, billion, yeah, trillion, 15 trillion, 15 and a half trillion years. Purport. Okay, from the purport. In the creation of the Lord, there are many wonderful things we can see with our own eyes every day and night, but we are unable to reach them equipped by modern materialistic science. We should not, therefore, depend on the fragmentary authority of materialistic science for knowing things beyond the range of scientific purview. For a common person, both modern science and Vedic wisdom are simply to be accepted because none of the statements, either of modern science or of Vedic literature, can be verified by them. The alternative for a common person is to believe either of them or both of them. Prabhupada is saying this because these are wild scales of time. Again, if you want more detail, check that book I refer to. The Big Bang and the Sages. I gave the link in another class. I can send a link in this one too if people are interested. It's cross-referencing what the Bhagavatam is essentially saying with the most up-to-date descriptions of modern science, and showing that actually, as science gets more and more accurate, it comes closer and closer to what the the Bhagavatam has been saying for 5,000 years, time scale-wise. Really interesting, if you're into that kind of thing. Verse 27, in that planet of Satyaloka, there is neither, this is the highest material planet, Satyaloka. In that planet of Satyaloka, there is neither bereavement, nor old age, nor death. There is no pain of any kind, and therefore there are no anxieties, save that sometimes, due to consciousness, there is a feeling of compassion for those unaware of the process of devotional service, who are subjected to unsurpassable miseries in the material world. From the purport, the Vedic wisdom guides us to understanding our relation with the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and to acting accordingly in order to achieve the desired result of returning home back to Godhead. But materialistic persons do not understand this. They want to make a plan to become happy in a place where there is no happiness. What does Prabhupada talk about? Yeah, so the idea is that on the highest material planets, they're almost completely purified of all material desire, and the only suffering that they could be said to have is they feel compassion for those who are still stuck, trying to make a home in the lower planets in the material world, because for them they're on their way out. You don't get to be in that higher Brahma Loka with the Lord Brahma unless you're like one lifetime removed from just going back to Godhead. Verse 28, after reaching Satya Loka, the devotee is specifically able to be incorporated fearlessly by the subtle body in an identity similar to that of the gross body, and one after another, they gradually attain stages of existence from earthly to watery, fiery, glowing, and airy, until they reach the ethereal stage. From the purport, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, all the universes are clustered together up and down, and each and every one of them is separately sevenfold covered. The watery portion is beyond the sevenfold coverings, and each covering is 10 times more expansive than the previous covering. The water that serves as covering for the universe is material, whereas the water of the causal ocean is spiritual. As such, the watery covering mentioned herein is considered to be the false, egoistic covering of all living entities. And the gradual process of liberation from the material coverings, one after another, as mentioned herein, is the gradual process of being liberated from false egoistic conceptions of the material gross body, and then being absorbed in the identification of the subtle body till the attainment of the pure spiritual body in the absolute realm of the kingdom of God. There's a bit of a technical description in this purport of these different layers. Verse 29. The devotee thus surpasses the subtle objects of different senses, like aroma by smelling, the palate by tasting, vision by seeing forms, touch by contacting, the vibration of the ear by ethereal identification, and the sense organs by material activities. Purport. Beyond the sky there are subtle coverings, resembling the elementary coverings of the universes. The gross coverings are a development of partial ingredients of the subtle causes. So the yogi or devotee, along with liquidation of the gross elements, relinquishes the subtle causes, like aroma by smelling. The pure spiritual spark of the living entity thus becomes completely cleansed of all material contamination to become eligible for entrance into the kingdom of God. You can only imagine how painstaking your practice must be to become free mechanically from all these layers. Bhakti yoga in this age is not performed so painstakingly and with technical detail. It happens automatically by the grace of Krishna, because it really is just Ishvara Pranidhana, just like help. That's what chanting Hare Krishna is. Help. It's a big rope back home. Verse 30. The devotee, thus surpassing the gross and the subtle forms of coverings, enters the plane of egoism. And in that stage, they merge the material modes of nature, ignorance and passion, in this point of neutralization, and thus reaches egoism and goodness. After this, all egoism is merged in the Mahatattva. That's the conglomerated, like the complete meeting of all material energies. All egoism is merged in the Mahatattva, and he comes to the point of pure self-realization. And in the purport, Prabhupada talks about this process, which is quite mechanical, and our own process, the difference. Okay. We may also remember in this connection that the process of gradual emancipation by the devotees in the manner mentioned above, although authoritative, is not viable in the present age because of people's being primarily unaware of yoga practice. The so-called yoga practice by the professional protagonists may be physiologically beneficial, but such small successes cannot help one in the attainment of spiritual emancipation, as mentioned herein. In other words, in today's world, the yoga practice of asana and pranayama is good for your health, but is not a viable source of spiritual liberation. It's not. It's just not. Because of our limitations. 5,000 years ago, when the social status of human society was in perfect Vedic order, the yoga process mentioned herein was a common affair for everyone, because everyone, and especially the Brahmana and Kshatriya, were trained in the transcendental art under the care of the spiritual master far away from home in the status of brahmacharya, childhood training. Modern man, however, is incompetent to understand it perfectly. Lord Sri Chaitanya therefore made it easier for the prospective devotee of the present age in the following specific manner. Ultimately, there is no difference in the results. We're going to the same place, but the process is different. The first and foremost point is that one must understand the prime importance of bhakti yoga. The living beings in different species of life are undergoing different terms of engagement according to their fruitive actions and reactions. But in the execution of different activities, one who secures some resources in bhakti yoga can understand the importance of service to the Lord through the causeless mercy of the Lord, as well as that of the spiritual master. The simple process of offenselessly chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord will gradually promote one very soon to the stage of emancipation. There are 3 stages in chanting the holy name. The first stage is the offensive stage. The second stage is the reflective stage of chanting. The third stage is the offenseless stage of the chanting of the holy name. In the second stage only, the stage of reflection between the offensive and offenseless stages, one automatically attains a stage of emancipation. That's liberation. And in the offenseless stage, one actually enters into the kingdom of God, although physically they may apparently be within the material world. To attain the offenseless stage, one must be on guard in the following manner. So Prabhupada lists here the 10 offenses to be avoided. He also talks about a lifestyle that's necessary to have to come to pure chanting. When we speak of hearing and chanting, it means that not only should one hear and chant the holy name of the Lord as Rama, Krishna, or systematically the 16 names Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But one should also read and hear the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of devotees. That's why we're here. The primary practice of bhakti yoga will cause the seed already sown in the heart to sprout. And by a regular watering process, as mentioned above, the bhakti yoga creeper will begin to grow. The watering is the hearing and chanting is considered to be watering. So it's letting it grow. It has to be regular, systematic and regular. And he lists the 10 offenses to be avoided. First offense is the offense at the feet of a devotee, to offend offenses against devotees. Wait a minute. No. Interesting. Yeah, it's a different list. It's about avoiding offenses. I'll just read them. Number 1, offense by one at the feet of a pure devotee may be likened to the mad elephant who devastates a very good garden if it enters. 2, one must be very careful to guard themselves against such offenses at the feet of pure devotees, just as one protects a creeper by all-around fencing. 3, it so happens that by the watering process, some weeds are also grown. And unless such weeds are uprooted, the nurturing of the main creeper or the creeper of bhakti yoga may be hampered. 4, actually these weeds are material enjoyment, merging of the self and the absolute without separate individuality, and many other desires in the field of religion. economic development, sense enjoyment, and emancipation. 5. There are many other weeds, like disobedience to the tenets of the revered scriptures, unnecessary engagements, killing animals, and hankering after material gain, prestige, and adoration. 6. If sufficient care is not taken, then the watering process may only help to breed the weeds, stunting the healthy growth of the main creeper and resulting in no fructification of the ultimate requirement, love of God. 7. The devotee must therefore be very careful to uproot the different weeds in the very beginning. Only then will the healthy growth of the main creeper not be stunted. 8. And by so doing, the devotee is able to relish the fruit of love of God and thus live practically with Lord Krishna even in this life and be able to see the Lord in every step. In other words, chanting is in one sense enough, but in another sense, it's important to be attentive to your growth and work on purifying your heart of inferior things, other desires, how you treat others, and be an active participant in your own purification. Don't just chant blindly. What that means, what that looks like, is described in so many places. Like, in a way, like the whole Nectar of Instruction is really about that. It's like if you just decide you want to go back to Godhead by chanting and being a devotee, how do you actually do that most effectively? It's like handbooks like that exist to help us to learn what the nitty gritty is. But the long and short of it is just don't expect to just chant blindly and that Krishna will lift you up. Like, he could, but it's faster generally if you actively participate in your own purification of heart. Verse 31. Okay, almost there. Only the purified soul can attain the perfection of association with the personality of Godhead in complete bliss and satisfaction in their constitutional state. Whoever is able to renovate such devotional perfection is never again attracted by this material world, and they never return. 32. Your Majesty, Maharaj Parikshit, know that all that I've described in reply to your proper inquiry is just according to the version of the Vedas, and it is eternal truth. This was described personally by Lord Krishna unto Brahma, with whom the Lord was satisfied upon being properly worshipped. So Shukadeva is saying, everything I'm teaching you has already been taught. I'm not making it up. It's all coming from Krishna. Krishna said these exact things to Brahma, the first student. 33. For those who are wandering in the material universe, there is no more auspicious means of deliverance than what is aimed at in the direct devotional service of Lord Krishna. What a verse. Very clear. Last paragraph of the purport. Srila Sridhar Swami and all other acharyas, like Jiva Goswami, agree that Bhakti Yoga is not only easy, simple, natural, and free from trouble, but it is the only source of happiness for the human being. 34. The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times. And after scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the highest perfection of religion. 35. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is in every living being along with the individual soul, and this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. This is a famous purport. It's a long purport. We're almost out of time. I won't read it, but if you would like to read Prabhupada practically giving you like a logical way to prove the existence of God in your own heart, this is a really good purport for that. How to find God in your heart through the process of understanding the nature of intuition and how it must be a manifestation of Krishna ultimately in the final issue. 2235. 36. O king, it is therefore essential that another famous verse, my God, there's so many of them. O king, it is therefore means conclusion verse, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify, and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. Always and everywhere. 37. Those who drink through oral reception, through their ears, fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life known as material enjoyment and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. End of chapter 2. Okay, we did it. Haribol. Jai, we have a few minutes for questions, comments, reflections. What did you hear about the Lord in the heart? Laura.
I think it's timely with this time of year with gardening and getting things ready to plant with, learning about the creeper, So I'm going to go back and read that again. And I just think it's just so apropos to where we are. So
Yeah, it's a very favorite analogy of our acharyas and Krishna himself. Lord Chaitanya used it extensively in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The seed of devotional service is watered by the constant hearing and chanting. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Went on a walk today, and I could smell flowers, fresh flowers, like for the first time in months, just like filling the air. It's like 70 degrees here in Burlington. So I was like, wow, Krishna, you did it again. There you are. You made it happen. So please, when you're gardening, think of that hearing and chanting analogy. Powerful, powerful meditation. More reflections, questions, comments.
I was touched by the section that talked about, Krishna's 8 inches sitting inside of your chest in your heart with his 4 arms and all the things in his hands.
Yeah,
That's really something to meditate on. Like instead of it being somewhere out there somewhere, that it's actually inside.
yeah. And as Prabhupada points out, like the exact proportion and size those are material considerations, but that's a guide to get us to think about the Lord in the heart, because he actually is in the heart ontologically, like in our actual existence, he's right next to us, side by side.
Mm.
And that's it's a beautiful meditation. The original printing, can I see the cover? The cover is a Radha Krishna Didi, but there's another piece of art in there too somewhere. I think the original printing of the second canto, if I'm not mistaken, was a picture of the Super Soul. Yeah, I may be wrong. Anyway, more reflections?
I appreciate how you spoke about how religion can show up in the different modes of nature, which is also how we can.
That's the Super Soul described there.
Um,
Four-arm form. Yeah.
Religion in
the modes of nature, yeah.
Nature, which also helps to make sense of why religion can have such a difficult connotation for
Right.
many people because of that fear, whether it was in tamas and fear, or even in rajas and just trying to achieve or get something. Whereas what bhakti is presenting or offering, the invitation is to have it be in that mode of service and exchange of relationship, and then love is actually above all of the modes of material nature, and like ultimately we're trying to get to that point. So that, and then also when just simple declaration there of don't expect to just chant blindly, but actively participate in your purification.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's offensive chanting, there's reflective chanting, and then we can get to offenseless, but that it is also part of our responsibility to be attentive to our own growth and purification of our own hearts, not just say, all right, I'm mumbling the Maha Mantra,
I'm saved, I'm good.
Yeah.
I signed on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the details of how to actually get through reflective chanting and all that stuff with the ins and outs. If you are a sincere person, you can consult any of these other books or ask somebody more experienced than you. We don't have time in the next 30 seconds to go through them, but the sum and substance, like the summary of that list of Prabhupada's was, like participate in your own purification.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really participate. Be attentive.
It's a good time to weed.
Yeah. Right. Otherwise, they'll choke them out. They'll choke out that beautiful flower you're growing of pure love for God.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We made it. So for this week, please read chapter 2 and comment and reflect in the WhatsApp. They were just amazing reflections this week. I love them. I always read them with such gusto. So reflect on whatever stood out from what you heard today or the readings or each other. And we'll connect back in a week on chapter 3, which is one of my favorite chapters, this canto. I like chapter 3 a lot. There's some really good stuff there. Jai.
Great.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Lord in the heart ki jai. Hare Krishna. And thanks especially to our online contingent. We know you're there. and we love you. Hare Krishna.
Very cool.
Hare Bol. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Hare.
Hare Krishna.